We have the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Washington Commanders in Philadelphia. This is your NFC Championship 2025 prediction and preview video. Hit subscribe if you're new. Also hit the like button. Let's start with the home team, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles have been taking care of business in the last two games. Their defense has been aggressive and it has been dominant on the field. And their offense has been pretty good also, especially with their rushing game. The problem with this offense over the last 2 weeks has been the passing game with Jalen Hurts. Now, this is not the first time the Philadelphia Eagles are facing the Washington Commanders. They're division rivals. They play in the same division, and they split in the division series 1-1. The Philadelphia Eagles beat them in the first matchup. In the second game, Jalen Hurts got knocked out of the game early in the first quarter, and the Washington Commanders came back late in the fourth quarter, and they won that matchup. But I look at Saquon Barkley. Look at what he has been able to do in the last 2 weeks against the Green Bay Packers and against the Los Angeles Rams. He just had 2 rushing touchdowns last week for 205 rushing yards, and he averaged 8 yards a carry. He had 2 long rushes on the day. That was home run hitters. Not only just that, look at what he did against the Green Bay Packers. He averaged 5 yards a carry and had 119 rushing yards. You have to use Saquon Barkley in this matchup as much as possible. Jalen Hurts doesn't look right. He suffered a knee injury last week. He did not miss any snaps. He did go to the blue tent. He did get checked out, but he took a lot of sacks in the back half of that game. And usually we know that Jalen Hurts can go out there. He can run on third down. He can extend the play. He did not look right last week dealing with that knee injury, and he has not looked right in the passing department since he suffered that concussion against the Washington Commanders. He's yet to throw for over 200 passing yards in the postseason thus far. When you look at Jalen Hurts in the last 2 matchups against the Green Bay Packers, 131 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. He was very efficient. He was 13-21. And against the Los Angeles Rams, 15-20, 128 passing yards, 0 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He got sacked 7 times. He did have a rushing touchdown that went for 44 yards, but that was early in the game. If Jalen Hurts cannot use his legs in this matchup to the fullest extent, it's going to be tough for the Philadelphia Eagles to defeat the Washington Commanders in this matchup. Not saying that they can't, but it's going to be tough because Jalen Hurts is not known to sit back in the pocket and dissect you like a Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes. But he is very capable of taking those deep shots down the field and getting the football to A.J. Brown and to Devontae Smith. And the national media, they are really giving Jalen Hurts a bad name right now. When you look at Jalen Hurts, no, he's not going out there. He's not throwing for 300 passing yards. He's not having the 4 passing touchdowns. But every single quarterback doesn't have to have a game like that in the postseason or even in the Super Bowl. All Jalen Hurts has to do is make the right decision and put the football to where it needs to be. Now, is he missing crucial passes at certain points in times? Yes. It was a fake tush-push play against the Green Bay Packers. A.J. Brown was wide open. Jalen Hurts missed him. He has to be cleaner with the accuracy, but he does have to go out there and have over 30 pass attempts in this matchup against the Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders, all season long, they've had a top passing defense, and look at what they did last week to Jared Goff. They forced him to have numerous interceptions on the day and a fumble also. Jalen Hurts last season was a turnover machine because Coach Johnson was a terrible offensive coordinator, so he could not handle the blitz. Now you look at him, he's doing a better job of taking care of the football. As long as Saquon Barkley can have those home run plays, you will be okay. Be aggressive in this game, but don't be too aggressive with the pass game because you have those guys in the secondary like Jeremy Chin, Marshawn Lattimore, and Mike Sandersteele. One wrong play could potentially lose the Philadelphia Eagles the matchup in this game because Jaden Daniels is on fire. So if I'm Kellen Moore, I'm running this football with Saquon Barkley as much as possible. And like I mentioned before, Saquon Barkley has faced his team twice already. And in those 2 games against the Washington Commanders, in the first game that the Eagles won, he had 146 rushing yards. He averaged 5.6 yards a carry, 2 rushing touchdowns. In the second matchup against the Washington Commanders, that's the game that Jalen Hurts got knocked out of with a concussion. He had 150 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. The Commanders are terrific against the pass, but against the run, They don't fare too well. And you look at Jahmyr Gibbs. Last week, he had a lot of success against this defense. You run the football. You be aggressive. You go for it on fourth down. If it's fourth and manageable with the tush push, and you get creative. But Jalen Hurts does have to go out there, and he does have to take advantage of the one-on-one opportunities if the Washington Commanders start to stack the box. And you're going against a great defensive mind and Dan Quinn. It's going to be very interesting to see what Kellen Moore has in store this time for the entire defense with the Washington Commanders. And I look at this offensive line with the Philadelphia Eagles. From tackle to tackle, they're one of the best units that's left in the postseason right now. In my opinion, they're the best offensive line that's standing. You run behind those guys, you work off of play action, you should be okay. But I'm going to pay attention to Jalen Hurts because Jalen Hurts was dealing with a knee injury last year. He did not look quite right dealing with that injury. And a lot of his game is built off the speed of his ability to leave the pocket and to avoid pressure and keep the drives going. And like I mentioned, he's a power runner. When I look at the defense for the Philadelphia Eagles, they should be okay in this matchup. Don't blitz Jaden Daniels that much. Jaden Daniels is phenomenal against the blitz. You have Vic Fangio. Now, they're missing their best offensive lineman. Sam Cosmi, he tore his ACL last week against the Detroit Lions. Jalen Carter has become one of the best defensive linemen in this league. You put that pressure on Jaden Daniels through the middle of the field. Do not let him step up in his throws over and over again. And you have Zach Bond at the linebacker position, one of the best linebackers this year. And tackling and coverage is a phenomenal linebacker. He had a great game against the Green Bay Packers, and he was very solid last week against Matthew Stafford and against the Los Angeles Rams. But when you have Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, those guys should be able to go back there and put a lot of pressure on Jaden Daniels and take away that run game. Now, you do have to worry about a lot of motion plays with the Washington Commanders. It's so many RPOs, so many times you have tight ends flying around, wide receivers moving around. But look at the Philadelphia Eagles. You have an aggressive front seven. You can get pressure without blitzing the Washington Commanders, but you don't want Jaden Daniels to go back there and pick apart your defense. So playing that press man coverage should help you out in this matchup. You have Cooper DeJean. You have Quinyon Mitchell. Quinyon Mitchell is questionable for this game, but he's on pace to play in this matchup. And you have C.J. Gardner-Johnson on the back end with Reed Blankenship. This is a defense that is known to go out there and cause turnovers. Look at what they did against Jordan Love. They forced him to throw 3 interceptions on the day. They had 2 fumble recoveries last week against the Los Angeles Rams. Bad weather conditions. Yes, that's also another reason to why Jalen Hurts did not have to throw the football all over the field because of those weather conditions. And that's another reason to why he got injured last week because it was snow on the ground. It was slippery and he just went down at an awkward angle. But look at this defense. This is a Super Bowl caliber defense. Go out there, be dominant, take away Terry McLaurin, and be on the lookout for Brown going deep across the field. Jaden Daniels had a huge play to him last week against the Detroit Lions, and big plays like that can shift the entire game. The Washington Commanders, they already have the momentum right now. And when you hear the national media talk about Jaden Daniels, he has his poise. He has poise and he has confidence. He doesn't care if he's down by 7 or 14 points. He's going to go out there. He's going to sling the football around. He has nothing to lose. And he has not turned over the football in the postseason just yet. In order for the Philadelphia Eagles to win this matchup, you have to create that pressure up front without blitzing and compromising your secondary. You have to take away those big, deep plays going down the field with Jaden Daniels and take away that run game with Austin Eckler and also with Brian Robinson Jr. The Philadelphia Eagles have to be aggressive in this matchup. And I look at the offensive end. Jalen Hurts, take care of the football. Look at all the opportunities that the Washington Commanders had last week because of their defense. If Jalen Hurts can just continue to take care of the football, take what the defense gives him, the Philadelphia Eagles could easily go out there and win this game. And they're playing at home. Now, on the flip side, the Washington Commanders, they are a great football team. So let's talk about them. The Washington Commanders, they're the Cinderella story. Last year was a terrible year. You had Ron Rivera as your head coach, Eric Bieniemy as your offensive play caller. You bring in Dan Quinn, you bring in Jaden Daniels, and now you're in the NFC Championship game. And when you look at Jaden Daniels in the last 2 weeks against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it was a walk-off field goal. He played phenomenal in that matchup. 24 of 35, 268 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. And he only got sacked once. Against the Detroit Lions, 0 sacks, 299 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns also. And he had 51 rushing yards against the Detroit Lions. When I look at the Washington Commanders, Their offensive line protection has been elite on the back half of the season because of all the motion, the misdirection, and the ability that Jaden Daniels has to go out there and to avoid pressure. I am worried about that in this matchup because Sam Cosmi is out with that torn ACL. The interior of this offensive line may take a major hit because he's a very good offensive lineman, especially in the rushing department. Now, the Washington Commanders, they love to run the football in between the tackles with Brian Robinson Jr., but they also have Austin Eckler, who's a do-it-all type of running back. He's a guy that can go out there, catch the football out of the backfield. He's a speed back. He can catch those corners. He can turn up the field for a big game. In those last two games against the Philadelphia Eagles, the Washington Commanders were marching down the field. Now, in the first game, in the second half, not so much. But that was one of Cliff Kingsbury's worst coach games of this season because he did not move Terry McLaurin around. Terry McLaurin only had one catch for 10 yards. And they put a lot of pressure on Jaden Daniels. He was trying to do too much as a rookie. The help was not there. But you look at what happened in that second game. Granted, Jalen Hurts was knocked out of it early on. You saw more motion. You saw more misdirection. It was more up-tempo. They went out there and they just kept spamming RPO, RPO, RPO on the Philadelphia Eagles, and they could not keep up. Now, part of that is because their defense was on the field a lot longer than they should have been because of the injury at the quarterback position. But you want to tire out the Philadelphia Eagles defense. You want to use time possession in this matchup. Look at what the Eagles did against the Steelers a couple weeks ago. They went out there to use time possession in the second half, and they could really get into momentum. If you can do that in this matchup with the Philadelphia Eagles, you could be cooking with something. But you have those offensive weapons in Brown. You have Terry McLaurin, who is a phenomenal wide receiver. You have Zach Ertz. You have these veteran pieces that have been here before. Unfortunately, Noah Brown is still in IR, but that's okay. You can still get a bunch of splash plays with the wide receivers that you have. You can load up the deep shots, but dinking and dunking your way down the field and taking your time is definitely going to help out against this Philadelphia Eagles defense. And the reason why I'm saying take your time, Jordan Love tried to rush passes. Look at what happened to him a few weeks ago. Matthew Stafford had a lot of success against his team last week, but he's trying to speed up the play. He fumbled the football. Take your time. And that offensive line protection is going to be key. I want you guys to remember this. Great protection beats almost any defense in this league. If they give Jaden Daniels enough time, he can see certain windows where he can put the football at. If you give Jaden Daniels enough time with the speed that he has behind this offensive line, you will be okay. But it's going to be very interesting to see how Cliff Kingsbury comes out and use the running backs in this matchup because the two running back system has been phenomenal with the Washington Commanders this year. It's really a college type of offense with the RPOs and the way that Jaden Daniels is able to go out there and use his legs. And I look at the Philadelphia Eagles defense. They are amazing. They have Zach Bond. They don't have Nakobe Dean in this matchup. So you may be able to go out there and get away with a bunch of rushing plays with Jaden Daniels, but be on lookout for Josh Sweat because he's a phenomenal edge rusher coming off the right side of the field. And they have a lot of good players in that secondary, just like Darius Slay, like I mentioned before. But when I look at the offense for the Commanders, they should be okay. Look at what Jaden Daniels has done all season long. The last two playoff games, no one had to win those games. They had them losing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They won that matchup. Against the Detroit Lions, they were the road team. They went into Detroit's house. Detroit had a bye week because they were the first seed. They came out there and they dominated with their defense, and Jaden Daniels continued to look like a superstar. Against the Cincinnati Bengals, he was on the road yet again. He outgunned Joe Burrow in his own house. So you look at the Washington Commanders and all the injuries that they're dealing with. I look at Jaden Daniels. Sometimes it comes down to the franchise quarterback. Can he do enough to get you over the hump? And I believe that he can in this matchup. It just comes down to that injury on the offensive line. That's all that I'm concerned about with the Washington Commanders. Besides that, they could put up points on this Philadelphia Eagles defense, and they've done it before. They've done it in the first half of the Thursday night football game, and they definitely did it in the second game of this season. I have no problems with their offensive side of that injury, but when I look at their defense, this is where I started to scratch my head. The defense with the Washington Commanders, they have been amazing against the pass. Even before they made the trade to bring in Marshawn Lattimore missed majority of this season with the Saints and with the Commanders. He was dealing with a hamstring injury, but we got to see him play against A.J. Brown, and he did struggle. He had some moments that made you shake your head and say, you know what, put another guy on A.J. Brown. Marshawn Lattimore has to step up in this matchup, and he did not have the best outing against Mike Evans. But I still do like Marshawn Lattimore. You're going to put him on A.J. Brown in one-on-one situations. I can see the Washington Commanders going out there and trying to put extra defenders up front to stop Saquon Barkley. Like I mentioned before, he's had 2 amazing games against his team. And the Washington Commanders, they're in the bottom half of the league in terms of stopping the run. They have to go back there and they have to stop the run in this matchup. You have 3 very good interior defensive tackles and Jonathan Allen, Johnny Newton, and Daron Payne. But it's the edges to where they're killing this defense with Saquon Barkley. And I'm looking at the linebackers. Can Frankie Louvu step up? Can Bobby Wagner step up also? Can this defensive line go out there and get enough push up front against the strong offensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles? This is why I love this matchup, because you have Jalen Hurts, who's a very good quarterback. You have Jaden Daniels, who's a phenomenal quarterback in his own right. But this game is going to be determined by the trench play. Can the Washington Commanders get enough pressure up front to slow down the rushing attack with Saquon Barkley and with Jalen Hurts? Because if they can, they'll have a great chance to go out there and win this game. Because we all know this about the Philadelphia Eagles. They love to win off of time of possession. They love to go out there. They love to take care of the football, run the football, and create these long drives. Or they want to make you play from behind. And I look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to try to go out there and use Saquon Barkley as much as possible. The counteract that if you're the Washington Commanders, you don't want him to go out there and get those big plays over and over again. You don't want to put Jaden Daniels in a bad spot. Just because Jaden Daniels was able to save you in the last couple of matchups doesn't mean that he's going to be able to come back and weather this storm. So it has to be a complete game. And last week against the pass, the Commanders, they were amazing. Against the run, it still made me scratch my head. So when Jalen Hurts is throwing the football around, if they can come down with an interception or 2 or even a fumble, that could really work into the Washington Commanders playbook here. Turnovers are going to be key in this matchup for both teams, but especially for the Washington Commanders. And like I mentioned, you have Mike Sanders still at the cornerback position. You have Jeremy Chin. He's listed as a safety. He can play nickel corner. He can play linebacker for you. He is a Swiss Army knife on that defense, and expect for him to get a lot of looks closer to the line of scrimmage in this matchup to try to weather the storm with Saquon Barkley and that offensive line. And you have Bobby Wagner, who's been a very good linebacker all season long. He has been in this situation before. He's a Super Bowl champion. He was on that same team to where Dan Quinn was the defensive coordinator with the Seattle Seahawks many years ago. That's why you brought him over, because he is still a very good veteran defensive player. Can he step up in this matchup? And I look at the defensive pressure with the Washington Commanders. This is a bit of a hot take. Jalen Hurts took 7 sacks last week. I look at the defensive pressure with the Washington Commanders. They're all good. You look at Frankie Louvu, do-it-all linebacker, 8 sacks on the season, 1 forced fumble. Dorrance Armstrong, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles on the regular season. Dante Fowler had 10.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and an interception. They can push the pocket. And if Jalen Hurts is dealing with that knee injury, you bring on that pressure. You just need to stop the run game. And you force Jalen Hurts to go out there and have to beat you over and over again with his arm. If they can play into that role, the Washington Commanders can go out there and take care of business, and they could be on their way to the Super Bowl for the first time in a very long time. But this is going to come down to trench play with the offensive line, with the Washington Commanders. How would that injury look with Sam Cosmi going against that great defensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles? And how would their defensive line look going against that offensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles? You have very good head coach Nick Sirianni. You have Dan Quinn, who has been amazing all season long, deserves to be in the Coach of the Year conversation. Personally, he is my Coach of the Year because of how bad this franchise was last season, and to look at them right now. With all that being said, I have to pick a winner. So it's a prediction and preview video. I do believe, due to the injuries with the Washington Commanders, it's going to be tough for them to win this matchup. But at the same time, I have to see how Jalen Hurts looks early on in this game dealing with that knee injury. Because even though Saquon Barkley was very dominant last week, they won that game 28-22. And they had 2 fumble recoveries in that matchup. Jalen Hurts did not look the same after that knee injury. I'm going to take the Philadelphia Eagles to win this game. And I'm going to take the Philadelphia Eagles to win this game 33-30. But let me know in the comment section below, who do you have winning this game? The Philadelphia Eagles or the Washington Commanders? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God bless.